dogma. Religion is dogma. So creationists have to project dogmatism onto science to try to level the playing field. In reality, practically everyone in science is trying to prove something wrong. That's how science works. Unlike ancient religious scripture, in science nothing is sacred. If you prove a pillar of science to be incorrect, you get a Nobel Prize. This is what makes their script so ridiculous. There is no censorship of flat earthers in the scientific community either, because flat earth is not science. Intelligent design also is not science. It's religion trying to Trojan horse its way into science. That's why real scientists reject it, not because of some imaginary materialist agenda, which again, in actuality is just a synonym for doing science. These empty mischaracterizations are yet another strategy of the DI. Too much science proving you wrong? Do what James Tour does. Just call it hype and walk away. It's a tactic that allows them to dismiss legitimate science without actually doing anything whatsoever to address that science. Not surprisingly, Casey uses this word too.
And let's talk about some of these early hominins and some of the hype that has gone on surrounding them.
They can cast doubt with just one word, and people who want them to be right will eat it up. They might as well just point at a journal article and say, "This science sucks," and watch their congregation nod their heads in mindless approval. It gets more subtle than these overt accusations as well. You have to look at the language they choose to use. There is a reason they are constantly using words like Darwinism and evolutionism. First of all, evolutionism is not a real word. It was invented by creationist propagandists. It is an attempt to liken well-established empirical science to a faith-based belief system by giving it the suffix ism. Creationism, evolutionism, scientism, take your pick. A desperate attempt to claim equal footing. With the word Darwinism, it's even more dishonest. The point of using this word is to pretend that the entire field of evolutionary biology is nothing more than the utterances of a single prophet, Charles Darwin, as though if one man can somehow be discredited, 200 years of biology would suddenly be turned on its head. This is insane. When Darwin was alive, humans were barely aware that molecules exist, let alone biomolecules like DNA. Modern biology and genetics would be unrecognizable gibberish to Darwin, and it does not rely on his work in the slightest, but rather rests on the laurels of modern research performed by hundreds of thousands of scientists all over the world. Darwin is just one of many great figures in the history of science who contributed to its advancement, just as so many have since him. It is not evolutionism. It is not Darwinism. It is not religious scripture to be taken on blind faith like the scripture the DI covertly upholds. It's called evolutionary biology, and it is a vibrant scientific field with contributors from countries all over the world working in numerous capacities and even of varying religious faiths. Just not the science-denying kinds. It's simply that the science deniers in the DI like to pretend they aren't science deniers. That's why they need that buzzword, materialism.
Science does not need humans to share a common ancestor with monkeys. Materialism does. We are not materialists. We see the human soul. We experience love. We live with purpose. We fight for justice. We are the quiet majority, and we will be quiet no longer.
Well, all kinds of animals exhibit love and other complex emotions, and even enact simple justice systems by which peers can be praised, punished, or expelled from a community. So this script is stupid. Vervet monkeys punish liars who sound the predator alarm in order to feed first, something referred to by some as proto-morality. Chimpanzees comfort and console one another and even mourn their dead. They are political animals who, like humans, utilize coalitions to overthrow leaders, make alliances, and carry out revenge. Of course, with animals, they say these behaviors are instinctive or genetic, but for some reason, humans can't exhibit this same behavior without a soul. Why all this focus on souls? Well, it's the easiest way to manipulate any Christian, because fear of mortality is the oldest fear in the book. Remind people that they're afraid to die, but disguise it as a clarion call, and you can get them to do whatever you want. This entire narrative is brainwashing 101. All the hallmarks are there, even the pageantry of pretending that they are actually the ones freeing people from brainwashing. Look at them project their dumb video onto all these screens like they are red-pilling the masses to wake up from their programming.
Fact. Modified monkeys. Modified monkeys?
If you haven't seen any content made by flat earthers, this is what they do too. The DI might as well be telling us about lizard Freemasons, NASA lies, and the firmament. But that's kind of the point of the DI, to deliver a message as blatantly dishonest, idiotic, and anti-science as flat earth, but do their darndest to make it look like real science. So what's the real agenda? Why spend all this time and money just to lie to people? Easy. Control. Being down with Jesus is the #1 right-wing tactic for getting people to vote against their own best interests. Don't like pesky science ruining your corporate or Christian fundamentalist agenda? No problem. Convince the people that science is evil. Science is trying to persecute you. Science says you're just a dirty, pointless ape. Don't listen to them, listen to us, and you'll never die. We've got your back, we're Team Jesus. So, what's the best way to feed people this tripe? You gotta get them while they're young.
I think that students should learn about the evidence for evolution. It should be taught. However, it should be taught objectively, where students learn about the evidence supporting it and also the evidence challenging it, and they can make up their own minds, weigh the evidence, think critically.
That's right, the old I want religion taught in science class shtick. It's astounding that we still aren't past this as a species. Sadly, the assault is happening in the scientific community as well. The DI has a tight connection with a journal called Inference, International Review of Science. On its About page, it admits to not being peer-reviewed while claiming to have no ideological, political, or religious agenda. Of course, if you have to say it. This journal was started in part by David Berlinski from the Discovery Institute, who is also seen in this Luskin video complaining about how stupid monkeys are. Here, you can see his name on the DI website and also on the Inference site. The DI has been given full access to this platform, which is why you'll find a bunch of intelligent design rubbish peppered around the site. Some scientists don't seem to be aware of this, and the journal pays unwitting scientists to publish their research in this journal to pad its credibility, which the DI then exploits to give false legitimacy to their propaganda. Fun fact, James Tour puts his Inference articles about the origin of life, where he's just lying the whole time, in his list of publications on his website. It would seem like Mr. 700 Papers is taking some liberties with that number. Funny how this also makes it appear as though he's an origin of life researcher, isn't it? If you think this religious assault on science is no big deal, you really are missing the bigger picture. It represents a concerted effort to drag the world, and America in particular, back toward the theocracies of Europe that existed until the end of the 18th century. A reunification of church and state, and re-establishment of a central totalitarian authority, with the ability to persecute non-believers, which really just means any subversive individual. This is not just the plot of The Handmaid's Tale. This has happened in the real world recently, in places like Iran and Afghanistan. As a result of American imperialist foreign policy, Iran went from a social democracy to a theocracy. Such a thing could happen anywhere. It can be a bit difficult to apply the appropriate perspective in this modern era, where most of us can say absolutely anything with no legal ramifications, and live our lives as we please. This was not the case for most of human history. Humans had long been subjected to extreme brutality by those in power, which was usually a unified religious and political institution. Christianity in particular has been a violent religion since it was acquired by the Romans in the 4th century. It was imposed with blood onto people throughout Europe during the Inquisition, and again by Europeans in their colonization of Latin America. This is obviously not to say that all Christians are violent or support violence, but the coupling of religious institutions with political ones can turn any religion, even one that preaches peace and love, into a murdering machine. And by suggesting that religion be taught in public schools, the DI is trying to swing that door wide open. Our long fight to remove religion from the centers of power and relegate it to the privacy of the home is one of the greatest achievements of human civilization. To lose this is to lose our freedom. This freedom was not given to the masses willingly. It was only attained through violent uprisings. Anyone who tries to pull us back to those times must be fought tooth and nail. We may not have to cut off the heads of monarchs as we once did. The situation is not yet so dire. But if we allow religion to become science, we will have lost the first major battle, and from there it could be an avalanche. Countries like Iran serve to demonstrate that things can indeed go backwards, and also that any religion can be a tool to impose or restore a central authority. Anyway, that's the DI in a nutshell. In every video of theirs, they parade the same half-dozen or so scientists that have deluded themselves into propagating this trash, which is based on either misquoting, mischaracterizing, or flat-out misunderstanding real science. While there is undoubtedly a high degree of intellectual dishonesty in their claims, likely justified in their minds by the thought of crusading for God, in listening to figures like Lyskin and Tor, I have concluded that there is also a large amount of willful ignorance, hubris, and narcissism as well. This manifests itself in the delusion that they are able to tackle any area of science despite having no experience in it, and reject the conclusions of the field if inconvenient to their ideology, only to then display confusion when the scientific community does not take them seriously. Protecting their egos from the realization that they are making exclusively erroneous ideological arguments, they cry censorship and end up producing garbage content that is relegated to blog posts and YouTube, which are obviously inadequate for publishing science. They flash journal articles and pretend to tell you about them, while instead blatantly misrepresenting them. They use misleading language, and they pay their team of editors to produce flashy content so as to make it all look and sound more legitimate than it is. A well-polished turd, one must admit, but a turd nonetheless. And what do we do with turds? We flush them. So that's a small window of insight into Casey Lyskin, a fraud parading as a scientist, the costume of choice for everyone at the Discovery Institute. Which one of these bozos will I expose next? You'll just have to wait and see. Until next time.